Disaster aboard the USS Constitution. Chapter 3.
I was overcome with grief, anger, hate, frustration, and just plain rage that at the moment I addressed the Angel Cloud officials, I meant every word. The Constitution had the firepower to do just as I had threatened, and I would have turned their planet into a radioactive cinder if I didn't get the cure. Although, at first, they didn't believe I meant what I said, I ordered a dummy torpedo to be teleported into their council chamber. They suddenly handed me an envelope promising that it contained the cure. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be given to the top medical researchers in the United System Federation. And it will be given enough time and to enough sufferers to prove the cure. I will be back. It may be to apologize to you, or it may be to carry out the promise I have made. With that, I left them with their faces hanging out. Admiral Yellowtooth admonished me for my behavior but then told me that if he had suffered the loss of someone he loved as much as I loved Stella, he might have blown up just as I had. Then he said something that took me back.
Friend David, you have always treasured the people around you. Don't stop that. It's what makes you the captain you are. It's your heart that sets you apart. You are the finest warrior I have ever met.
Suddenly, I realized just how much his friendship meant to me, and I told him so. As we set out for the wormhole, I directed my yeoman to make several copies of the material in the envelope. Transmit one copy to the Admiral. When we get to the home side end of the wormhole, to send copies to every ally of ours that is a carbon-based life-form civilization. Enter copies of the material into our computer in several levels and store 3 paper copies in different places on the ship. I do not want this material disappearing. We will give credit to the people of Angel Cloud 3 to ensure no unscrupulous individual or company tries to steal the credit. The bright glow did not engage us, and we journeyed to the wormhole and met the dolphin people. They were surprised to see us returning and asked about our adventure. I told them as much as I thought they might need to know, then I told them that the cure was given too late to save my Stella. They commiserated with us and then left on whatever business they had. We entered the wormhole and emerged at the southern wormhole end 16 nanoseconds later. The Confederation and the Constitution parted company with a promise to engage in another adventure in the future. We went UL-12 to Sector 00, refusing to engage anything or anyone until we could deliver the cure to Earth medicine. Arriving in Sector 00, I called Admiral T. Vass. Admiral, we have the cure. She interrupted.
And Stella, how is she?
I told her, we did not make it through all the fun and games the people of Angel Cloud 3 in time to save her. So I have her body preserved in a cryo chamber to be interred in Texas, next to her mother and father. But I got the cure anyway. But I'm not sure it's the cure. So we are sending the material to you. I told the Angel Cloud 3 people I would return with thanks or keep my promise to annihilate their world. T. Vass was shocked, to say the least.
David, surely you don't mean that?
I got a little emotional. A lot depends on how I feel when I do return to them. If this cure works, I will apologize and give thanks. If it is a fake, watch out. Their games cost me my wife and Davy and Ginny their mother. I asked T. Vass how her husband was, and she replied that Admiral Sorrell had lost his life on a mission to the Galapagos 5 system, a sneak attack by the pirates he had been sent to destroy. His fleet did destroy the pirates, but Sorrell lost his life, saving others. Nevertheless, he was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. My heart hurt for T. Vass as much as it did for Davy, Ginny and me. I asked how she was doing, and she told me Sorrell was lost 7 years ago. I've learned to go on living alone. It's hard, but I've survived. Admiral Marovich retired again, and Admiral Halloran was bedridden. The new Chief of Naval Operations was Admiral John Self, and his immediate deputy was Vice Admiral Beverly Self, which was the best choice for the service as far as I was concerned. That evening I got a call from John inviting Davy, Ginny, and me to dine with them. The kids and I arrived at the Self's quarters at 1800 and were invited in by Beverly.
Ginny, David, Davy, it's so good to see you. It's been too long.
Do I know you?
She replied.
You were just a baby then.
She turned to me.
David, where's Stella?
I could not hold it back, tears running down my face. She's dead. She died of pancreatic cancer. John had walked into the room and heard both John and Beverly wrap their arms around Ginny, Davy, and me and grieved with us. Finally, I got hold of myself. Admiral, thank you. We held a shipboard service, and she was interred in El Paso next to her mom and dad. John and Beverly both stepped back.
David, to you, we are number 1 and number 2.
John said in a firm voice.
David, you were the best captain we ever had. It was you who pressed Marovich and Halloran to re-examine our records. We are John and Beverly to you, Captain.
We dined, and they listened to Davy as he expressed his grief and listened to me as I talked about the Constitution and her crew. The friends we had made and the butts we had kicked of the enemies we had encountered. Finally, John asked,
Dave, what now?
I told him, I'm going to raise my kids to be kind, gentle, strong. I have to be a mother and father to them, and I hope they will choose the Navy, but I will stand next to them in any endeavor they choose. Then, like General Douglas MacArthur, I will just fade away. I want only a proud ship and a star to guide her, and I will be content. That evening as we were leaving to return to the Constitution, I said, I guess I'll be hearing from your office once in a while. Good night, my dear shipmates. We were asked to stay in orbit for 10 days and allow the crew shore leave. I was sitting in my ready room when Joel stuck his head in.
Captain, you have a visitor.
Send him in number 1. He snickered.
He's a she, Admiral T. Vass.
I started to rise when she said,
As you were captain.
Admiral, to what do we owe this visit? She replied,
Captain, the cure you brought back is real. It is already starting to reverse the cancer in all our test subjects. I have high hopes. I understand that you have provided the material to every carbon-based ally.
I replied, yes sir. I wanted to get the cure out to the system allies immediately. And I wanted the Angel Cloud 3 people to have all the credit. The Admiral sat quietly for a few minutes, then she said,
Captain, Dr. M. Tao wants to continue the research into the cure. And I want to get back to working with people. So I have the Chief of Naval Operations okay to join your crew and replace Dr. M. Tao. Is that okay with you?
My thoughts went back to the day I took command of the Constitution and my meeting with my senior officers. T. Vass had impressed me then as much as she impressed me now. T. Vass, Admiral, you will always be welcome on this ship. We're friends, and I hope we will always be friends. She smiled.
Then I will report tomorrow morning for duty, sir.
She turned, with the most feminine swish I had ever seen her do.
Toodaloo, Captain.
0800, T. Vass reported to me, and one of the first things I noticed, she was wearing a uniform with Lieutenant Commander insignia on her sleeve. Commander? What gives? She shrugged.
I thought it best not to outrank my captain. These stripes don't feel as heavy as the Admiral's stripes. Tell me, does Trank still serve on this ship?
I told her that Trank was still a valuable member of our crew. With that, she asked to be excused and left. Somehow I could not get T. Vass off my mind. I found out later that T. Vass had contacted Commander Trank and renewed their acquaintance. They talked about the time they had found me, their captain, lying on my bunk, fully dressed, crying in my sleep. They had woken me and, by some psychic manipulation, were able to ease the pain I felt. I didn't know back then that they had agreed to do the psychic manipulation every morning to give me the peace I needed to be the captain of the Constitution. And because of the loss of my wife might have such pain again. They would be prepared to treat me as they had before. Commander Trank remembered that she had gotten the impression when both she and T. Vass were in my mind that T. Vass was attracted to me then. Would she be so attracted to me now? I didn't know this then, but Commander Trank told me later, along with several other tidbits. They also talked about my children. T. Vass said she thought they were adorable. One habit I have formed was to tour the ship every morning and afternoon, encouraging the crew and glancing at the ship's condition. As I toured the ship, I began to notice T. Vass passing often. It seemed a little strange at the time, but I assumed that she was refamiliarizing herself with the old girl. I also found out later that she was going to the classroom to visit with Davy and Ginny. He told me about it in the evening. I asked him what he thought about that. He said,
She's nice, I like her. She told me about Mom.
I looked at him, so now it's Mom instead of Mommy? He looked a little sheepish.
Dad, I'm 8 years old now. I don't have to talk like a baby.
I hugged him, saying, so, it's Dad now and not Daddy. We both laughed and then we practiced our martial arts. That evening I discovered he had outgrown Dr. Seuss, and now embraced Treasure Island. I was a little disappointed, I had not outgrown Dr. Seuss. After our shore leave, we were given a mission to explore the far end of the southern wormhole. So, we began our journey to the wormhole. Just as we left orbit, we encountered an Archon ship that hailed us. On screen, I saw an Archon captain.
Captain Stevens, ahoy. May we speak with you?
I replied, sure, why not? He responded.
Captain, I know that we have not been the best of friends, enemies, as a matter of fact. But my people want to change that.
I said, great. But you need to negotiate with our government and not a mere captain.
Then, perhaps you can direct us to the right people?
He replied. I ordered, helm. Re-establish orbit. Tal, try to get Admiral Self on the comm, please. Beverly appeared on the monitor.
David, what can we do for you?
Admiral, the Archons want to negotiate a treaty with us. Shall I leave it in your capable hands? She replied.
Yes, but stay in orbit. You're the only ship that has ever defeated the Archons. John wants you and the Constitution close by.
I smiled. Aye, sir. Lieutenant Commander Trank entered the bridge about that time.
Captain, Tivas and I want to know how you're doing.
I confessed, I'm not sleeping too well. Other than that, I guess okay. Why? She replied.
We remembered how tortured you were when you thought you had lost Stella. We are concerned, that's all.
Emily, I appreciate your concern. I'll survive, I have my kids. She nodded.
Of course.
She left the bridge. I didn't know it, but T-Vass and Commander Trank checked me out every night. They would slowly pass by my cabin every evening at various times and check the currents of my emotions. One night Commander Trank was caught off guard by a wave of emotional pain while she was checking outside my cabin. Both Davy and I were emitting strong waves of emotional pain. I was dreaming of my Stella lying in her bed in excruciating pain, her life slowly ebbing away, and I couldn't do anything about it. And yes, there was a lot of emotional pain. So Commander Trank called T-Vass again to aid her in ministering to Davy, Ginny, and me. As had happened so many years ago, they could not wake me with the door chime. Consequently, T-Vass ordered the computer to open my door. They woke me and ministered as they had done 8 years before. After me, they ministered to Davy and Ginny. I was so thankful to these ladies. Outside in the corridor, the two ladies talked. After a few words, Emily asked.
Tivas, you have feelings for the captain, don't you?
She replied.
Emily, you know I do. 8 years ago, when we were doing this very thing, you knew I had feelings for him. I loved Sarail but never lost my feelings for the captain.
Emily asked.
Are you going to tell him?
T-Vass replied.
No. Not now. He needs to heal. It took me about 2 years before I could even think about another relationship. We need to help Davy Ginny and him to heal.
Commander Trank shrugged.
Okay. I won't say anything right now. But you need to see if he has feelings for you.
The negotiations with the Archons wore on, and we stayed in orbit and maintained a yellow alert status. To say the least, we did not trust the Archons. But the negotiations seemed to be conducted in earnest. One evening, the captain of the Archon ship invited Joel and me to dine with him and his first officer. We accepted, but I asked if I could bring a female companion also, and he agreed and said,
Ask your first officer to bring a companion too. We'll make it a quadruple dinner.
I told Joel I wanted Commander Trank to be one of our companions and T-Vass the other. I briefed the ladies, I would like you to be alert for anything you might sense during our visit. But I would hope that you might enjoy the evening as well. Both ladies understood my concern and said their companions might also be espers. I remarked, they're not stupid, but then neither are we. During the dinner, Emily gravitated toward Joel and T-Vass toward me. I was content with this arrangement. We were all in dress uniform, and the ladies we were introduced to were lieutenant commanders, as were Emily and T-Vass. We didn't let on that T-Vass was an admiral in disguise. During the meal, the Archon captain asked about the cure.
I understand that you have the cure from the Angel Cloud 3 civilization. Captain, would it be possible for us to obtain the cure? Our people need it also.
I looked at T-Vass, and she nodded almost imperceptibly. I told him that I would ask Admiral Self if he agreed, I would give it to them. Even if our negotiations don't result in a treaty, I don't wish that kind of suffering on any sentient being. The captain's two companions looked at us with tears running down their faces. One of their ladies said,
You are a true gentleman, Captain, and your people are good people. My father died of that disease in great pain, his death was a blessing. We didn't have to watch him suffer any longer.
Finally, T-Vass spoke up.
We are starting to find that the cure is more versatile than we thought. No cancer has been able to withstand the cure. We are considering calling the cure AC3 in honor of the civilization that developed it.
I asked to call the Constitution, and their captain was agreeable. I asked Tal to text Admiral Self and ask if we might give the Archons the cure. Half an hour later, we received the okay to give them the cure. I told Barbara to teleport one of the packets over to our location. And, voila! I handed the captain the packet. Captain, this is it. This is yours. I ask only that the Angel Cloud 3 people be credited with its creation. He handed the packet to one of the ladies, and nodding, he replied,
Captain, thank you. My mother suffers from a form of liver cancer. I pray that it is, as Commander T. Vaz says. My soul suffers knowing how much pain she must endure. We will call this AC3, as you said.
As we parted for the evening, their captain extended his hand.
May I shake your hand, Captain?
We shook hands, and I said, Thank you, Captain. You set a mean table, and your companions are quite comely. I enjoyed their company. You must dine with us some evening. However, that was never to be. The Archons left their negotiators and left for Archon because of the AC3. Later, another ship returned to take the negotiators home with a draft treaty in hand. When the second ship arrived in Sector 00, they left a message for me from the captain we had dined with.
My dear Captain Stevens, my mother has responded well to AC3, and is resting comfortably and is on the mend. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Go with your deity.
I shared the message with the whole crew. Each one of my crew was involved in obtaining AC3. Every crewman is responsible for making AC3 available to the galaxy. Thank you all. That includes you, T-Vas. As I made my routine tour of the ship, I noticed T-Vas several times, once with Commander Trank, once alone, and once in the company of 2 female ensigns. Each time she would smile and acknowledge my presence. I thought, that's strange. But it made me feel good. Her smile was infectious, and I found myself smiling at the crewmen I passed, which made me feel good too. As I sat in the command chair, Commander Trank asked to speak to me privately. Joel, you have the con. We went into the ready room. I turned. Emily, what is it? She replied,
Captain, you seem more at peace than before. How are you, Ginny and Davy, doing?
I said, we're doing okay. I don't wake up in the middle of the night and cry much anymore. And I found myself smiling at our crewmen as I toured the ship this morning. She paused, then,
Captain, how do you feel about T-Vas? And remember, I've been in your head.
I stopped for many seconds, then, I've always had good feelings for T-Vas, ever since that first day we met in the shuttle bay at Naval Base 13. She was beautiful then and is beautiful today in so many ways. Too bad she's an admiral. Emily smiled.
What's wrong with her being an admiral, may I ask? Remember Admiral and Commander Sims.